Hello, my name is Dale Pierrottie, and I do a technique called bousillage. I first learned about bousillage when my grandfather from Basile, Emmaus Darbon, was digging a well. And this grayish clay came up, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. And because I remember my neighbors used to make little bowls out of clay that they would find, and they'd dry it in the oven and give it to the Mother's Day present or something like that. When I found out the movie Bel Air was being shot in 1985, they needed somebody to repair the bousillage chimney over at the Longfellow Evangeline Park over there in St. Martinsville for the shooting of the film. And nobody knew anything about it or wanted to do it much, and it was all kind of falling apart. I had some perspective then what they were talking about. So that's how I got started doing it. But the bousillage is done by placing between the cypress beams here, and they use cypress because it had oil in it, prevents rotten termites. These sticks here are called barreaux, and they're made out of white oak because they're much stronger. The barreau is this little thin stick. You can see it's pointed on one end and it's squared on the other end. And on this end right here, you'll see there's a little chiseled indentation about a ½ inch deep, and this fits into there. And then the pointed end is wedged and hammered down. Moss that can be used, raw moss was used by the Indians, but the Acadians preferred using the cured moss. Now by cured, I mean that the moss has been kept wet for about 2 months or so, and you can actually make a cordage called tarabe, which is very strong. Some of this rope 3 inches thick can haul cypress trees out the forest. Now they would dig a pit and get down to the clay. Now I say the clay because bousillage, you always hear mud and moss, but mud is sort of a general term, but people who work with it know that it's clay. A lot of times the clay, which you see this grayish color, is very common. They call blackjack clay, but you can also see the different colors of clay that we have in Louisiana. The Bayou Vermilion clay right here is more brownish, but all that's Red River deposits. Some of it near Basile, where my grandpa is from, is very red. And then out in the prairies, you'll see a yellowish kind of clay. And in other areas, you'll see this grayish clay, which is probably the most common. The Roman numerals on the mortise and tenon, and they would go locked into place, and there's a hole there where the dowel goes through to lock in the hole. No nails were used. You had to be wealthy to have nails in those days. Everything was done with wooden nails called trunnels to hold even the siding together, which was riv siding. Milled lumber didn't come about until about the 1880s, when people started replacing the older siding. And that's about the time that bousillage sort of went out of fashion, because people were doing things more separate, not as much communal things going on like building these houses. A lot of them were moved from the bayou to the prairies when they started growing rice and doing other things. After I did about probably 10 structures, I started actually teaching how to do it, because as I got older, it's nothing but hard work. Stepping in the pit, lifting it up, getting on the ground, starting on the bottom, and climbing up ladders with a whole pallet full of these. It's nothing but work. It's very hard, but it's really rewarding because you got your hands in walls that nobody's touched since 1790 or 1840. So there's that connection with the history of Louisiana.